Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with 12 violinists whose work I couldn't live without. Well, it's supposed to be 16, but I couldn't come up with 16. I mean, I can come up with 16 violinists. I'm sure most of us could, but there are really only 12 whose work I couldn't live without. And the reason for that is because there is much less really good violin repertoire than there is piano repertoire. Those glasses are disgusting. And as a result of that, everyone and all the violinists are doing the same stuff. You know, the same few concertos, basically. And so you don't need so many of them. You may like them, but you don't need so many of them. And, you know, the idea of this series is people whose work you can't live without. It's a concept that some of you incredibly intelligent people seem to have difficulty wrapping your brains around. You know, you want to list either everybody who you've ever seen who's ever given a good performance, which doesn't count because if it was a live performance, it's over and you're living without it by definition. And or you want to just tell everybody what's in your collection. I mean, come on, do the thing. In the piano talk on this topic, I knew there would be all kinds of issues. You know, there are people who don't know how to count to 16, which is really kind of sad, given how smart I know you all are. And there are people who just comment on other people's lists. No, stop it. Make your own list. Do the assignment. Or don't comment at all. I mean, that's the fun of this. It's having to choose, having to think about it. And so anyway, I have 12. If you want to go up to 16, feel free. Do not go over 16, but you can go up to 16. No bonus selections. No, I can't leave out this, but here are my 16. 16 is the limit. And much less if you want to, which I actually think shows rare discernment. And taste and scrupulosity. Anyway, here's my list. You ready? Jascha Heifetz. The universe begins with Jascha Heifetz. You have to include Jascha Heifetz, or you can't have a list. It's that simple. I mean, you've got to do Jascha Heifetz. And I don't want to hear, he's cold, he's fast, he's this, he's that. That's all bullshit. He was amazing. Just amazing. Nobody could play the violin like he could play the violin. You may like other violinists more, but oh my God. And if you don't have the basic Jascha Heifetz stuff, his Mendelssohn, his Tchaikovsky, his Beethoven, his Brahms, you know, and he worked with the best accompanists. So in orchestras, so, yeesh, his Sibelius, his Korngold. I mean, you just got to have it. Nathan Milstein. I love Nathan Milstein. You see, you can admire Heifetz, but love Milstein, you know, because Milstein was Heifetz was somewhat grim and unsmiling. That is true. That is true about him. Not that it mattered that much when he played, but he was. Milstein had wit. He had, I don't know, there were certain pieces that he just really owned, like the Tchaikovsky concerto, and then he did the Dvorak back in the day when not so many people were doing it, and I just like Milstein, and he wrote a wonderful autobiography, really witty, charming man. Hilary Hahn, she's just tremendous, she really is, and she did the Hysteric concerto, she recorded it, good for her. She does Beethoven and Schoenberg or something like that on the same disc, and I don't know what was on that disc, but you know, she's got a very, very wide range of repertoire, and boy, could she play. Oh my goodness, she plays marvelously, and she only seems to be getting better as she's getting older, which is just fantastic. Itzhak Perlman. I know people will say, Itzhak Perlman, he's like the Vladimir Ashkenazi of the violin. You know, he just does everything. Well, he does, and he does it all really well. The only problem with Perlman is that his recordings are overbalanced to favor the violin because, as he said, who cares about the rest of it? They're there to listen to me. Well, he's right. But when you want to hear a concerto, you want to hear more than just the violin, generally speaking. But he's a very, very sensitive and powerful and intelligent and wonderful violinist with a big, juicy, romantic sound. Some people think his vibrato is excessive. I can understand that. I really can't. But it's still lovely. Let's see. Who else have we got? David Oistrakh. Of course, we have to have David Oistrakh, the great Russian violin school. And I mean, he knew Shostakovich and all that Russian stuff he did. He did it so marvelously, along with Brahms and Beethoven, with like Klemperer and Kuitans. And oh, yes, fantastic, wonderful violinist. And there's a big box of his stuff out there now. He did all kinds of contemporary Russian stuff that doesn't get a lot of credit because it wasn't recorded for major labels, but it's in his box. So, and he was a tremendous chamber music player as well, and a pretty good conductor, really. Rachel Barton Pine, her stuff, a lot of it is on CD. She is a very interesting violinist. She really is, because she does really cool programming, smart programming, interesting programming. She makes the instrument something new and novel. She's done a lot of interesting repertoire. She's worked from the Baroque period all the way up to modern stuff, with a lot of interesting romantic things along the way, like Brahms and Joachim coupled, Beethoven and Clement, the guy who Beethoven wrote his violin concerto for, coupled, stuff like that. She's always worth listening to. And she has more than the technique and intelligence to do something, very, very interesting with the usual romantic repertoire. But she knows that she has to do something interesting. And when she's interesting, she's not perverse. She's musically valuable. So Rachel Barton Pine, I think, is terrific. Andrew Manze. Andrew Manze is the only Baroque violinist here. And he doesn't play the Baroque violin anymore. He's a conductor. He's making a Vaughan Williams symphony cycle, for heaven's sake. But, he was so exciting when he was doing those Bieber recordings for Harmonia Mundi and some of that other Baroque stuff. He's a wonderful violinist, a terrific artist. He was one of the very, very few Baroque violinists who I found tolerable. He had a beautiful tone, wonderful intonation, terrific musicianship, effortless virtuosity, all of those things. And he really dug into this repertoire that I hadn't heard before, and I found it thrilling. I really did. The recordings speak for themselves. There aren't really that many of them, but what there is tremendous, absolutely tremendous. And it's only inevitable that he would get tired of that early music stuff and start conducting real music. Yes, I'm not surprised at all. Next, Kaja Danczowska, the Polish violinist. Oh, is she a splendid artist. She did that incredible Frank and Szymanowski disc with Christian Zimmerman, which was the thing that turned a lot of us onto her initially. But her discography was fairly substantial. It just wasn't on major labels. It was on Polish labels. I mean, she's really focused on her career there, and in Germany and a couple other places like that. She did a lot of work for German radio, and the box devoted to her has some of those recordings as well. She's made a career mostly as a pedagogue, as a teacher, as much as a performer. But she is one of, I think, the luminaries of the violin profession in the 20th century. She's very, very smart and very musical, and I love hearing her play. I really do. She's just one of those artists who takes you on a journey with whatever she does, and there's real purpose behind the way she phrases and how she handles a tune, and she's just excellent. Also, Viktoria Mullova, who I also think was just marvelous. I like her because she's dark and serious, in everything she does. She takes those romantic firework pieces, the Tchaikovsky concerto, the Sibelius concerto, the Shostakovich concerto, and it's not a romantic firework, but it's a big thing, and she plays them with such purpose, such intent, and she has this sort of dusky, rich sonority. I mean, she's got a real personality on the violin, and it comes through in everything that she does. I think she's a splendid, splendid artist. Josef Suk. You gotta love Josef Suk. First of all, he was a fabulous violinist in all the basic things, like Brahms and Beethoven. He was an amazing chamber music musician. There was the Suk trio and a duo violinist, but he also did all the Czech stuff. He did Dvorak, he did Martinu, he did his grandpa Suk. He did all of that wonderful, wonderful Czech violin repertoire that nobody else was doing at the time. So his recordings are invariably worth hearing, and they're splendid. I mean, he was another. It comes to mind. I'm going through this list. I kind of like smart violinists. The ones who are not just virtuoso. And Heifetz was a smart violinist too. I want to emphasize, people who just tossed off like Wieniawski. They really, really played the quality violin repertoire, and when they did schlock, they made it sound like quality violin repertoire, and that's what I'm looking for, really. Gil Shaham. Gil Shaham is amazing. He had such a wonderful series of recordings for Deutsche Grammophon before they dropped him, because they dropped everything that was worth keeping. That was the major labels in the early 2000s. Just shedding things like losing their own hair, basically. And now he has his own label where he's making splendid recordings. Another very, very thoughtful and smart violinist, I think, who's never made a bad record. And he's done all the major stuff, and he's done it all superbly, but, he's got more than that up his sleeve, and that really is what, turns me on to him. And finally, last but certainly not least, number 12, Arthur Grumiaux. How can you not? The apotheosis of the Franco-Belgian school of violin playing. He was the Mozart guy par excellence, but he also did Vieux Temps and all those like sort of quasi Isai, quasi schlocky, romantic composers. And like I said, he played them like it was the greatest music in the world. Another fantastic chamber musician, first rate with that too. And you could listen to him play anything. I'd listen to him play the Brussels telephone directory. It would be marvelous. It really would. He had another guy with just a beautiful and characterful tone. And that's my 12. It's really a very simple list. It came to mind right away. I didn't even have to, scratch my head and think about it. These are the ones who I listen to most frequently and who I think I admire the most overall. But again, this is not the list of greatest violinists ever or anything like that. We're not trying to do that. These have to be your choices. The ones that you play because you love them and you have them and own them and collect them. And that's the idea. Not just, anybody you've ever thought who you did a great, violin thing. There are tons of those, tons of them. Millions, billions. I could list 50 violinists who I think are wonderful violinists. But when I want to listen to something, play it on the violin, this is generally speaking, these are the artists that I look for. So give me your list and let's see what happens. Keep on listening. Friends, thanks so much for joining me. Take care.